According to the Catechism of the Catholic Church, the Church will follow in the footsteps of the Lord's Passion. In 2033, it would be 2,000 years since the crucifixion of Jesus Christ, and 2030 is a key date because the enemies of God want to deploy their entire program by that date. But is there any prophecy that points to those dates? What do they say? Yes, there are, and they seem very clear. In this video, we'll analyze the prophecies that refer to those dates, which are related to the request that Our Lady made in Fatima: consecrate Russia to Her Immaculate Heart. Before starting, we want to remind you to subscribe to our YouTube channel, our newsletter, and our Telegram channel. Like this video and share it with your friends. And on the screen, you will see how to collaborate with our mission through Patreon. Your support allows us to continue. All links are in the video description. Between May 13 and October 13, 1917, Our Lady appeared in Fatima, Portugal, to three little shepherds, Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta. This manifestation is considered the key piece to understanding the period in which we are, and the events we see in the world bring us more light on these apparitions. On July 13, 1917, Our Lady of Fatima promised that she would return later to ask the Holy Father and all the bishops for the consecration of Russia to Her Immaculate Heart. Later, on June 13, 1929, the Holy Trinity and the Virgin Mary appeared to Sister Lucy in Tui, and Our Lady said, "The time has come when God asks that the Holy Father, in union with all the bishops of the world, carry out the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart, promising salvation by this means." In 1930, in a letter addressed to her confessor, Sister Lucia explains that the Lord promises to end the persecution of Russia if the Holy Father, together with all the bishops of the world, carry out a solemn public act of reparation and consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and if His Holiness promises to recommend the practice of the first Saturday's devotion. Heaven's request isn't fulfilled. But let's remember for later that June 13, 2029 marks 100 years since the day on which the Holy Trinity and the Virgin Mary appeared to Sister Lucia. In August 1931, Sister Lucia sent a letter to her bishop, which contained a locution that our Lord made to her. "Let my ministers know that they are following the example of the King of France, delaying the fulfillment of my request, and who will follow him also in disgrace. But it will never be too late to return to Jesus and Mary." What was our Lord referring to? He was making explicit reference to the unfulfilled requests that the Sacred Heart made on June 17, 1689 to the King of France through Saint Margaret Mary of Alacoque. The request was that the king consecrate himself to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, that the Sacred Heart be painted on the king's banners and engraved on his arms, that a building be built in which there was an image of the Divine Heart to receive the consecration and homage of the king and the entire court, have the Mass authorized by the Holy Apostolic See, and obtain all other privileges that must accompany devotion to this Divine Heart. Neither Louis XIV nor his successors, Louis XV and Louis XVI, fulfilled this request. And exactly 100 years later, on June 17, 1789, the Protestant and Masonic armies carried out the great uprising of the French Revolution. The king lost his throne, and imprisoned, he recalled the request of Jesus Christ and finally consecrated France. Dethroned and imprisoned, he created and promulgated the act of consecration of France to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, but it was too late. And on January 21, 1793, Louis XVI died. So, in Rianjo, Jesus Christ warns us through Sister Lucia that this dark chapter of history will be repeated, and this time, the ministers of his church will be among his unfortunate victims. And that although in the end the church will fulfill the request, and heaven will accept it, that doesn't make the penalty void. The fate of Louis XVI is strikingly similar to the vision in which a pope is attacked along with other bishops, priests, religious, and laity, revealed in the year 2000 by the Vatican as the first part of the third secret of Fatima. The vision begins with the image of a bishop dressed in white as the light. It continues with a pope who climbs a steep mountain along with other bishops, priests, and lay people, on whose summit there was a large cross of cork oak logs. To get there, the Holy Father traversed a large ruined city with a hesitant step, afflicted by pain and sadness. He prayed for the souls of those who died. Having reached the top of the mountain, he was forced to kneel and was killed along with his companions by a group of soldiers. This vision is complemented by two other visions that Jacinta had, which were recounted by Sister Lucia in her third memoirs. In the first one, she saw the Holy Father in a very large house, kneeling before a table, with his hands in his face and crying. And outside the house, there were many people, and some of them threw stones at him, while others cursed him and said many bad words. In the second vision, she saw roads and fields full of people crying from hunger and without food. The Holy Father was in the church, praying to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and all those people prayed with him. These visions can be taken not only in a physical sense, but also in a spiritual sense, and would reveal things that would happen in the world and the church. And what can we conclude from all these prophecies? That not having carried out the consecration of Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary in time and form increased the evils in the world and within the church, because in another video, we've suggested that the bishop dressed in white from the vision of the third secret of Fatima could be an impostor pope and not the real one. We've talked about this theory in a video in Spanish. If you want to watch it in English, let us know in the comments. Therefore, it seems that 100 years after the request for consecration will arrive the moment in which the pontificate will receive the same retribution of the King of France, to whom the late consecration didn't exempt him from the penalty. 100 years after the request for consecration of Russia brings us to 2029, and the death of Louis XVI took place 4 years after his removal. So we could hypothesize that the evils of the world, the persecution, and the conflicts within the church will escalate until 2029, and that the hardest period will be from there to 2033. Well, up to here what we wanted to share with you about how the non-consecration of Russia in time and form is the thermometer of the tribulation, and how it could indicate the hardest moment and its completion, which would be in 2033. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about these prophecies?